Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just another minute as more people sign in. Okay, let's get started. Great. So, hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay Rosen. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed. Whether that's reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, job interviewing, dating, flirting, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language in your country of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il. That's NBN, excuse me, Hebrew at nbn.org.il. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can also write to us in the chat window with any questions, comments, concerns, or topic requests you may have. You can also see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Olé. The first search result will be a link to our playlist with over 200 past lessons, 40,000 plus views. You can subscribe to get our latest lessons there. You can watch all of our previous lessons at your convenience on demand. You can also get all of the resources that we share with each lesson in the description. It's in the gray box. You might have to click on see more, but you'll get a link to all of our previous spreadsheets, playlists, all sorts of things like that. You can obviously drop us a comment under each previous lesson, give us a like there. They're there for your convenience and for to watch and learn from at any time. If you are joining us on Zoom, like I said, write in the chat with any questions, comments, concerns, or topic requests you may have. We'll be looking at the transcript after class. If you have any questions about the topic we're about to discuss, please write in the Q&A at the top of the hour, in addition to telling you about our Cafe Au Lait Conversations class on Wednesday, as well as next week's topics. I'll go over any questions that you may have that we have time for there. So, this week we are continuing our exploration of Israeli identity through music. And the basic premise is not so basic, but is to understand we are not a regular Hebrew language class. We're not even necessarily a regular language class. We're about helping you succeed here in Israel, and that includes getting to know Israeli society. And that may be different from the parts of Israel that you are already know, whether you learned Hebrew and or about Israel in formal education, experiential education, you've been to Israel before. We hope to share with you other facets that make up Israeli society that you may not be used to and you may not have any part of, such as today's class may be a great example of that. But also in today's class, I hope to not only share with you different parts of Israeli society you may not be familiar with, but also commonalities, places that we can find a lot of things in common with each other, despite our different upbringings, perhaps, or perspectives, or tastes, whatever it may be. how much overlap there is in Israeli society. And we're going to do a great example by listening to some music today. We're also going to look at some lyrics as well. And the examples I bring you today are as much um, a reflection of ourselves as they are, like I said, on Israeli culture. And I think you'll understand that a bit from the first two. We're going to actually listen to the first example. I have three songs to share with you today. Some of these we're going to go into the lyrics more than others. And in this first case, I'm actually not going to translate it for you. Part of what we're going to do to understand this song is listen to the translation. We're actually going to listen to the original. The original is by a very famous musician and popular singer who unfortunately passed away a few weeks ago. His name is Yishai Levi, and Yishai Levi was and still is one of the most popular singers in the genre that we call muzika mizrachit or muzikat mizrach tichon. Muzika is music. Mizrachit literally means Eastern, and Yam Tichon is the Mediterranean. So Yam Tichonit, Mediterranean. So we call this genre of music either in English, you'll often hear Mizrahi music or Mediterranean music. First off, because we do not use the word Oriental. That is a very outdated word, and we don't use that term. Um, and Mizrahi is a catch-all term that was used up not for very created very recently to basically describe everyone who wasn't Ashkenazi, meaning a Jew coming from Central Eastern Europe, or Sfaradi, Jews who originate from the Iberian Peninsula and ended up in various parts of both the Mediterranean and Europe, but also in the Middle East. Mizrahi is the catch-all term for everyone else. And that everyone else is actually very diverse and very large, and even intersects with those other two communities. So that could be someone whose family comes from Iran or Yemen or even Ethiopia, but also from places where there are Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. So it's a catch-all term. And when we talk about musica mizrachit, music that is of this, we're not talking about specific Jewish communities from around the world. We're talking about a very specific Israeli genre. And it's a type of music that combines Greek music, Turkish music, and Arab music together to create something that's very uniquely Israeli. Sometimes they're covers of original songs. Sometimes it's a melody that was from a totally unrelated song, but they've turned into sounding like it. Sometimes it's about the instrumentation. A lot of times it's about the words. Sometimes it's about the way it's sung. You usually know this type of music for a couple different things. How it sounds. It immediately sounds to you, quote unquote, Mizrahi, right? In the what we think of in aesthetics, the things that connect us from one thing to another, we often think of the sound of this as Mizrahi, the scale that they use. Even if we don't know anything about music, we know what it sounds like. The instrumentation is usually of Middle Eastern or Mediterranean instruments, be it actual acoustic or electronic. And a lot of this uses electric keyboards and electric instruments. The music, it's the sound of the words of the singer themselves. They often speak with accents that we relate to communities of Jews coming from places that spoke Arabic or Turkish or Greek or Persian or other languages. So some of the pronunciation may sound different, as well as the topics they sing about. Musica Mizrachit is often jokingly referred to as Israel's country music, right? Because if you think about what is country music, it's an inherently unique American product that jokingly is always about two topics. Everything's either really good or everything's really bad, right? And it's usually the joke is always about country music, whether you like it or not, often told it's either something really good or something really bad happened to your connection with God, your girlfriend or wife, or your dog. It's not quite the same in Musica Mizrahit, but you do often have this stereotype of thinking everything's really good or everything's really bad. So a lot of drama, a lot of emotion, and people often will, as you'll see in one of our clips, look down on it. They'll think it's something that's very on the one hand, I would never listen to that on my own, but it wouldn't be a wedding in Israel without Musica Mizrahit. Or I need to hide that I'm listening to it on my iPhone or on my iPad or iPod or CD player or cassette player. So it was considered very underground music for a long period of time, and it was never heard on mainstream radio. And now if you asked a native Israeli about some of the songs we're about to listen to, there, of course we know this. I may not like the music, but of course I know these songs. So we're going to look at that interplay of this specific genre, but also in general, how we play around with these biases we may have in our own selves and towards each other as Israeli society, but ultimately we come together because we do like this music. So I'm going to share with you this one song by Ishai Levi. That's his all-time favorite hit, biggest hit. You've maybe you have heard this song before. You'll hear it on the radio. You'll hear it at, like I said, at weddings and other joyous occasions, but also you'll just hear people listening to it. We're going to listen to the first verse and chorus, and then I'm going to share with you a cover version of it that's going to talk about a little bit more what I'm saying. And it's also going to help translate it for us. So if you can't follow the words, perfectly all right. You're going to get the English translation shortly. Now just listen for the next minute or so of the song. It's from 1989, and it's going to sound like 1989 in very much Mizrahi, Musica Mizrahi terms. Is out of the way? All right. Okay. Let's get that bigger.
מה יפות הן שתי עיניה, אש הלהבה, מבטים שלחו אליה, אש בתוך ליבה, לי נגנו ביקשה היא, לי נגנו בקול, לא נפסיק אמרה عد عليها رقدي يا دخانيفي عد בתוך הקצב عد בתוך הקסם رقدي رقدي رقدي.
Okay. So just like I described, right? You can hear already certain things that make this and a great example of Musica Mizrahit. Electronic keyboards. The tone, the sound of the music sounds immediately Middle Eastern or Mediterranean to you without necessarily putting your finger on a specific region, right? And even if you can't understand the words, you can hear how he's singing, and he's saying certain letters. Even if you don't know the words he's saying at all, you can hear, for example, ha. When he's saying a word that has the letter chet in it, he's pronouncing it like you would if you're coming from an Arabic-speaking background, chet, which is also one of the standardized ways to speak it in modern Hebrew, as well as the letter ayin. Most of us grow up learning and even making aliyah that ayin is the same sound as aleph. It's a stop, right? It's a silent letter that takes whatever vowels under it. But ayin in Hebrew, not just spoken by Jews in the Middle East and North Africa, but also in relation to all the other Semitic languages, is its own consonant, and it's pronounced way back in your throat, ein, right? And you can hear him say that ein, right? And so those are two common affectations, not in every Mizrahi song, but in a lot. So this song is very representative, not just of his career, but also of the genre. So to help translate this, I'm going to get the help of a famous actor and comedian here in Israel, Idan Alterman. He's got a little intro in English, in Hebrew, that I'm going to translate, and the rest he's going to translate the song for us. But he's going to share some insight, some important cultural insight by doing so.
ישי לוי הגדול.
Right? This is Idan Altelman. He's a singer, he's a comedian, he's an actor, and he says that was the great Ishai Levi he's referring to. This is a stand-up performance he's doing.
באמת זמר ענק. אני חושב
Truly a giant of a singer. Bemet Zamar Anak. Truly a giant singer. And what does he say now? אני חושב שכל שיר מזרחי, I think that every Mizrahi song,
שכל שיר מזרחי יישמע מעולה על
Yishama Meule, would sound great
ליאונרד כהן.
if it was sung by Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen, the famous Jewish singer, very popular here in Israel, uses a lot of Jewish imagery in his songs. I'm sure many of you know him and his works.
וכל המתנשאים על מוזיקה
Right? And he says, "Az lechol hamitnasim al muzika mizrachit." Everyone who denigrates, who looks down upon Mizrahi music,
מזרחית, ויש כאלה שאומרים,
and there are plenty of those. Yesh ke'ele she'omrim, and there are those who say,
הטקסטים פחות טובים, זה שימו לב.
"Oh, the text is so basic. It's just so subpar." And what does he say? Simu lev ma koreh. Pay attention what happens.
מה קורה אם ליאונרד כהן היה שר את זה?
Pay attention to what happens if Leonard Cohen would sing the same song. He puts on the hat that is trademark look of Leonard Cohen, and that he says, here's a translation, word by word, by Leonard Cohen.
תרגום אחד לאחד לישי לוי. Oh, how wonderful her eyes were. The fire and the spark. Everyone was looking at her. Fire from the heart. Play for me, she asked me. Play for me and laugh. I won't stop, she told me, till the sun is up. So dance and lift your hand up. You're in the rhythm, you're in the magic. So dance, so dance, so dance.
Right? What's the punchline here? Many of you know the joke, right? Everything sounds better if it was sung in opera or something similar to that. He's saying the same thing here. Everything would sound better if Leonard Cohen sang it, but he's saying something more deep here, is that people who would otherwise denigrate musica mizrachit, say it has no depth, it has no punch to it, it's just dance music or it's wedding music. It has nothing more to give than that, right? He puts on the hat. He sounds like Leonard Cohen. He sings it with an acoustic guitar rather than an electric keyboard in the background. And all of a sudden, everyone's heart is swooning over this music that because he translated into English word by word, and he really did translate it word by word into correct English, right? The idea being we have a lot more in common. I am making a little fun of you, the people who responded well to this, who like the sound of Leonard Cohen but don't like the original. But I'm showing how much more we have in common at the same time, right? And that's a power of music. That's the power of Hebrew in a lot of different ways. The next example I want to show with you of bringing people together, we're actually going to look at the English first. We're going to listen to it, and then we're going to listen to a retelling of the Hebrew. And this is another classic song in Musica Mizrachit as a genre. And in looking around to making sure, I always try to see if there are other translations of songs from Hebrew to English, not necessarily to take their translation, but just to see what they do. I can safely say that aside from the bots out there, the automatic translations, no one did a handwritten one and turned it into an educational module like you see here for this song. And this is a classic. This is from 1995. This is by a singer named Ofer Levi, not related to Yishai Levi. Levi, of course, is a very popular name here in Israel and among Jews. This song is called Bageshem Nirtav. In the rain, I get wet. This is the very stereotypical view that many Israelis who do and don't like Musica Mizrahit have this song, and we'll listen to it in just a minute. But I wanted to show you the English, just so you have some context of what you're going to hear, because we're going to listen to the Hebrew, and then we're going to listen to another form of the Hebrew in a slightly different variation. Okay? So what's the English? And if you can read the Hebrew or you read the translation, by all means do so. We're going to listen to the Hebrew very carefully in a minute. Your radiant beauty, there are no words to describe it. The heart burns. How is it possible to give up? Each word is a prayer towards your beautiful soul. My songs I dedicate to you from the soul. When you passed by on the street, I called out your name. You turned back. You kept going. Your black hair, jeans tight to your body, and when I'm next to you, I'm in joy. Without you, I'm lost. Next to your house, I stand. In the rain, I get wet. Awaiting only you, infatuated. There are no words in my mouth to describe. Suddenly, you passed by with someone else. Oh ho, that's my heart breaking. Okay, that's the English. The Hebrew is, again, the translation of it. Those of you who can read the Hebrew, I hope you noted it. It's a very different kind of Hebrew. And you're going to listen to the song first, the original version of it, and this part that we just read together. And then you're going to listen to a retelling of it and understand why I'm not going to read it in Hebrew out loud. So let me share with you the original version of the song, just the first few minutes, to better illustrate what we're talking about here. Sorry, just 1 second.
את יופייך זוהר אין מילים לתאר הלב בוער איך אפשר לוותר כל מילה היא תפילה אל נפשך יפה את שיריי מקדיש לך מהנשמה כשעברת ברחוב קראתי בשמך הסתובבת לאחור המשכת ללכתך שערך שחור לגופך ג'ינס צמוד לידך מאושר בלעדייך אבוד מול ביתך עומד בגשם נרטב מחכה רק לך מאוהב אין מילים בפי כדי לתאר לפתע עברתי מחר או זה את ליבי שובר
Okay, another classic song in this genre. If that sounded familiar to you, by the way, you have quite the, I don't want to say eclectic taste. The music that you heard is actually a song by Julio Iglesias. It is not a translation of that song, but it's using the music. So you already get how much more interconnected this genre is, because like I said, it brings elements from different parts of the region together. Sometimes they're covers. Oftentimes the songs themselves in Israel get picked up by countries around the region, including countries that don't have direct relations with us and turn them into covers in various languages. It's a much more fluid genre than perhaps other genres here in Israel that are popular here. It's not to say they're any more or less, but it has its own dynamics, including this song. So we read the lyrics in English. You now heard the original. Now we're going to hear a reading of the words in Hebrew. And we're going to hear it not from me, because in comparison to the person we're going to hear from, we're going to hear it from Israel's premier narrator and premier master of ceremonies. His name is Dan Kanel. If you have been to any official ceremony in Israel, if you've watched any official ceremony in Israel, if you've watched any governmental anything taking place in the last several decades, you will recognize this guy's voice. And even if you don't recognize his voice, pay attention to how he reads the script and pay attention to the two people who are there in the studio with him. He's reading the lyrics of this song. And the two people in the studio with him are reality TV show stars here, and they're very well known. She is Maya Betzalel. His name is Kuti Sebag. They talk a lot about the representation of people who listen to this kind of music. He's being interviewed on Reshet Gimel. Reshet Gimel is Israel's Israeli only music station. Only Israeli music is played, including Mizrahi music. And he's going to read the lyrics, but he's going to read the lyrics as Israel's official voice. And he begins it, he's going to say, Birshutchem ani koreh beresh. With your permission, I'm going to read this with resh. He's going to say the letter resh like a trill instead of resh, sounding more Sfaradi to people. So let's pull that up so you can hear. Just a second.
זה בריש. את יופייך, ברשותכם, אקרא את זה בריש. את יופייך זוהר, אין מילים לתאר. הלב בוער, איך אפשר לוותר? כל מילה היא תפילה אל נפשך יפה. את שירי מקדיש לך מהנשמה. כשעברת ברחוב קראתי בשמך. הסתובבת לאחור, המשכת בלכתך. שעריך שחור, לגופך ג'ין סמוד, לידך מאושר, בלעדייך אבוד. מול ביתך עומד בגשם נרטב, מחכה רק לך מאוהב, אין מילים בפי כדי לתאר, לפתע עברת עם אחר, או, זה את ליבי שובר. מול ביתך עומד בגשם נרטב, מחכה רק לך מאוהב, וכן הלאה.
Wow.
Right? Why are they so overwhelmed by this? They're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Reshet Gimel, of Israeli only music station. And here's this guy, deep avuncular voice, right? Who's usually affiliated with official state ceremonies. And he's singing this song that's super melodramatic, super over the top, that's considered in this genre that you weren't really supposed to be a fan of in public, right? This is still the night. It wasn't commonly heard on mainstream radio, songs like Bageshem Niltav. And all of a sudden, he says the words, and it sounds beautiful. It sounds like the most beautiful poetry the Hebrew language in 5,000 years has ever created. And he's sharing two things at once. Again, that dissonance that the previous clip showed us, that once we change our perspective a little bit, it's actually quite accessible and it's quite a lot. And it says something about our own biases. But look at these words. Those of you, again, regardless of what level of Hebrew you're at, just look at these lyrics. Again, I can't do justice to the way he read them. You're not going to find a lot of mainstream Israeli songs that have words like these, both the words themselves and the complexity of these sentences. את יופייך זוהר אין מילים לתאר, הלב בוער איך אפשר לוותר. Yes, it all rhymes, but the way it's constructed using possessive suffixes and flipping around the sentence structure and how descriptive the words are. כל מילה היא תפילה אל נפשך היפה, את שירי מקדיש לך מהנשמה. It's using Hebrew in the way it was meant to use, super poetic, super descriptive, florid even, in ways that you're not going to hear what we would otherwise call Israeli music, right? Think of what you think of Israeli music. It's not going to sound like that. It's not going to read like that. And here is Israel's premier voice, the guy everyone associates with the most important moments of Israeli life, saying these words. And the look on the two um, uh, radiocasters, hearing the song they grew up listening to and loving, but also probably not being so proud of liking the song because it was musica mizrachit, just being enraptured by it. Right. And that's not only a power of music, that's also the power of how we can bring together different parts of Israeli society that wouldn't necessarily listen to it. And I'm going to wrap this section up of understanding Israel's different communities by what we listen to and what we have in common with each other by looking at a very popular song from the early 90s. It was written originally by a guy who was a copywriter. He also wanted to be a poet, and he wrote a whole bunch of songs. This song was originally passed on to one female singer who liked it, and she made a cover recording of it, but it wasn't so popular. And then it was given to another singer. And this singer made Aliyah with her family from Tunisia. She grew up singing in the army bands, which were in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the premier place to become a musician in Israeli society through the military. That was part of your service. And she sang very classic Israeli music with a very classic sound. And then as she got older and became more independent uh, with her career, she found her voice. She literally found her voice, which is an unmistakable sound. She found her identity. And this is one of her biggest hits. Her very big hit, we actually looked over several years ago. She was the first singer to make a recording of what time and time again voted in by Israelis to be the most Israeli song or the most popular song ever, Ein li eretz acheret. I have no other land. We did a whole lesson on that several years ago. Again, shout out to our YouTube channel to watch it and read the lyrics and learn the song. She made the original version of it, which is the one that most people know. Her name is Corinne Alal. Unfortunately, she also passed away a few years ago. This is her other big hit. And we're going to read the lyrics in Hebrew and in English together. And I want you to, again, use your imagination, not just about the words themselves, but who's the audience. All right? So here are the lyrics. I'm going to go through the stanzas in Hebrew and then in English. Okay? אנחנו פוחדים מהצל של עצמנו, נצמדים לקירות הבתים, ורוב הזמן מתביישים בגופנו, חופרים מקלטים. We fear from the shadows of ourselves, affixed to the walls of houses, and most of the time we're embarrassed in our own body, digging shelters. אנחנו נמלטים ממסיבה משוגעת, נדחקים לסירות משוטים. כל יבשה היא ספינה שטובעת, כשחופרים מקלטים. We escape from a crazy party, shoved or shoving ourselves into rowboats. All dry land, each piece of dry land, is a ship that's sinking when we're digging shelters. And then comes the chorus. אנחנו זן נדיר, ציפור משונה, החלומות באוויר, הראש באדמה. We're a rare species, an odd bird. Our dreams are in the air and our head is in the ground. אנחנו מרמים בעיקר את עצמנו, לא עיוורים, אבל לא מביטים. ולא ברור מה נשאיר אחרינו מלבד הפחדים. And the chorus returns. We deceive particularly ourselves. We're not blind, but we can't see. And it's not clear what we'll leave behind ourselves apart from our fears. Okay? So these are the words. 1992, this becomes a big hit, both for Corinne and a lot of different communities because you read these lyrics and you can see yourselves probably in these, right? Anachnu Zan Nadir. That's the name of the song. Zan Nadir. Zan is a species or a type of something. Nadir, rare. So we're a rare species. Tzipor Mishuna, an odd bird, an odd duck, as we would say sometimes in English, right? Achalomot ba'avir, harosh ba'adama, right? Our dreams are in the air and our heads in the ground, right? This imagery of we're afraid of ourselves. We're afraid of our true selves. We dig shelters. We're digging safety nets for ourselves, but they're also in the ground, right? Think about it that you are such a unique person, you have all this uniqueness to you, and you feel so alone by it, right? You feel like there's no one else who understands you. And yet, this whole song is anachnu, we, right? And think about the power of that. You're singing this to yourself, maybe consoling yourself. No one understands me. Maybe I'm the lone Jew in my community. Maybe I'm the lone Jew in my community who's thinking about making Aliyah because I no longer feel safe, or I really want a new change, or I'm so filled with Zionism, I really want to make a new life in Israel. Or I've moved to Israel and everything's still really scary and new, and I'm feeling a little alone sometimes because people don't get who I am. Or the fact that Corinne Alal, very late in her life, formally came out of the closet as gay. And here at the end of June, at the end of Pride Month, this song is heard at many pride parades here in Israel and at rallies to say, we sing this song to ourselves to feel something connecting, and all we have to do is look around and see how many other people are singing it. And it doesn't matter what sub community we belong to, whether we like Musika Mizrachit or not, whether we made Aliyah or not, whether we're this or that or the other, we're all at the end of the day, there's something odd about each of us, and we can find some commonality and some comfort by knowing we're all singing the same song. And it's true. How many people know this song in Israeli society from the early 90s, still sung to this day, regardless of who they are, where they are, what they otherwise listen to, what they otherwise identify or affiliate with? Says a lot. We're all looking for that connection, and we get that connection. Sometimes we have to make a little fun of ourselves or make a little fun of each other, but at the end, we're all singing a very similar song. It's no coincidence that the same person who sings this song is also the person who sang Ein li eretz acheret, I have no other land, Israel's most popular song. So we're going to listen to this, early 90s. You have the lyrics. Once we listen to the song, I'm going to take some questions and talk to you about Wednesday's class and next week's class.
אנחנו פוחדים מהצל של עצמנו, נצמדים לקירות הבתים, ורוב הזמן מתביישים בגופנו, חופרים מקלטים. אנחנו נמלטים ממסיבה משוגעת, נדחקים לסירות משוטים. כל יבשה היא ספינה שטובעת כשחופרים מקלטים. אנחנו זן אדיר, ציפור משונה, החלומות באוויר, הראש באדמה. אנחנו פוחדים מהצל של עצמנו, נצמדים לקירות הבתים, ורוב הזמן מתביישים בגופנו, חופרים מקלטים. אנחנו נמלטים ממסיבה משוגעת, נדחקים לסירות משוטים. כל יבשה היא ספינה שטובעת כשחופרים מקלטים. אנחנו זן אדיר, ציפור משונה, החלומות באוויר, הראש באדמה. אנחנו זן אדיר, ציפור
So before I get to your questions and tell you about Wednesday's class next week, again, just to wrap it up, it would be an injustice here at Cafe Oleh and frankly any Hebrew class you ever take, whether it's with us or anyone else, not to give you the description in which uh, the context in which we learn this language and why we're learning this language. We're not learning this language to learn conjugation tables. We're not learning this language to get vocabulary. We're learning it in order to apply it to Israeli society and in turn be a part of Israeli society. And there's no better way to understand Israeli society than how the language is used, whether it was Israel's national narrator um, reciting the lyrics of a classic melodramatic song, or making fun of people who don't like a certain type of genre by turning it into something that is acceptable to them, or understanding we're all a bunch of odd birds at the end of the day, right? And finding comfort in that. Whatever it is, if the language isn't coming alive in how it's actually used, we're not doing you a disservice as participants. So, toda rabba, thank you all for joining this week. I'm going to get to your questions in a second. Wednesday, we're going to continue talking about these three songs and in general, Israeli music, Israeli identity. Do I connect with these songs? Do I not connect to these songs? What other songs for me define Israel? And my connection with Israel, my connection with the Hebrew language, that'll be in Wednesday's conversation class. Again, 7 p.m. Israel time here on Zoom. Highly recommend all of you to join, regardless of what level you are. You are all welcome. Next week's class, we're going to go back to some grammar, but we're going to go back to grammar in a way that is applicable in everyday life, meaning how to use the roots of words. Remember, usually those three letters that in a specific order give us 50% of the meaning to expand our vocabulary. And instead of it expanding in the way we've done in the past, we're actually going to expand the root. So we're going to go from three letters to even four letters. And how do we create new words? By playing around with the roots themselves. By adding maybe an extra letter here or another letter there, we can actually create not only a new word related to that original one, we can make words that sound like the 21st century. How do we do that? That's all next week's class. Let me get to some Q&A. Is this music ever called Maghrebi from the word meaning the western part of the Arab world? Well, first off, Maghreb, which is the official name of Morocco, means west. Okay, it's actually not from the Asian part, it's from the western part. This music is not called that in Hebrew because we're talking about Israeli society. It's called Muzika Mizrachit or Muzika Yam Tichonit, either Eastern music or Mediterranean music, again, referring to the roots of it, which is primarily Greek, Turkish, and Arab. Is there expression for Israel's country music? You can say Musikat country Israelit, Musika countryt shel Israel, but no, we would typically use the word Amami. Amami coming from Am, nation, people, very complex word that describes us as Jews. We use to mean like folk or folk, like folk music, Musika Amamit, you could say. That would be the closest in what we're talking about here, is if we think of Musika Mizrachit as Israel's country music. How is his full name spelled? Yishai Levi is Yud Shin Yud. It's his first name, last name Levi Lamed Vav Yud. Um, Pronouncing a het as between a kaf and a hey and not just like a kaf. Is it accepted to learn Hebrew with that distinction between chaf and het? So you typically won't learn that. There was, and we've talked about this, we had a class several years ago about this, where there was a large disagreement when modern Hebrew was being standardized. How do we deal with 2,000 years of exile, where on the one hand, this language wasn't used in everyday life, but on the other hand, each community had its own way of using the language, particularly pronunciation. That's both consonants and vowel sounds. How do we reconcile that? So compromises were made. For example, one of the biggest compromises is that in modern Hebrew, the default accent is on the last syllable. Okay, and the version that you say the letter resh is how the Sfaradi community of 19th century Jerusalem spoke, right? All of those were compromises. Similarly, that both het and chet are considered appropriate, and ayin are both considered appropriate. But other ones, other letters that have their own sounds, for example, kuf and kaf in modern Hebrew are considered the same, and they are standardized as one sound. But kuf, if you come from communities, particularly in the Middle East, you would pronounce it as quf, much farther back in the throat. And that goes the same with other letters that we've talked about before, which is all to say you will hear people speak it, you will probably not learn it. In modern Hebrew, we usually standardize chet and ayin, not het and ayin. Usually the only people who speak those are people who come from families and communities who use that, primarily from the Middle East and North Africa. You won't hear that very often, and certainly you won't be taught that. Okay? Based on the musical intro of Ageshem Niltav, it sounds like the 80s, 90s music. You're absolutely right. It definitely sounds like mid 90s synthesizers, the style, the aesthetics, but also the instrumentation. Is that what you mean by Mizrahi music, incorporating the styles of the music? Absolutely. If we went through a history of Mizrahi music, and we'll probably do that at some point in the near future, right? If you listen to the music from the 60s and 70s, it's going to sound like the 60s and 70s. If you listen to the 80s and 90s, it's going to sound like those respective genres. Just like a lot of music that wasn't part of the mainstream, it often adapts and pioneers cutting edge instrumentation or cutting edge technology. So you're going to hear a lot more synthesizers at a time when people were into rock. Just like, by the way, that's the case in what we would call mainstream music, right? At a time when people hated disco, but that sound permeated into what we call dance or electronic music. The same thing here. One thing was popular on the mainstream, and subcultures were using more innovative technology because they had access to it and they weren't as steadfast in trends as perhaps the mainstream was. Okay. Can you recommend radio stations that play Mizrahi music? I currently listen to Radio Noshmi Mizrahit, and I've been looking for other stations that play similar styles. At the top of my head, I don't have them. Certainly on Spotify and on YouTube, you can get lots of playlists. I also recommend listening to Reshet Gimel, which is where we heard the narrator reciting the lines of Hageshem Niltav, Bageshem Niltav, because they play both. They play all genres of music made in Israel. So long as it's in Hebrew, they'll play it. So I highly recommend that station. Okay. Who is now the most popular musician in this style? So, apropos it being June, I did not play the song that many people perhaps expected me to play. And there's actually a great educational lesson on it that I'll share with you from the Jewish Federations of Canada. The most popular Mizrahi singer right now is Omer Adam. Omer Adam has his career for at least the last 10, 15 years. He's the most popular in this genre. He changes also Musica Mizrahit to sound different. Each musician brings a specific, a unique blend to it. He brings something that's even more accessible to the mainstream, perhaps, than others do. He doesn't necessarily sing in Het and Ayin, but he is nonetheless considered Mizrahi music. Okay. So just 1 second. Okay. With that, strategy to catch lyrics as you hear them. So for writing down the lyrics for all of you, I use a website called Shironet. I'll send you that along with the recording, along with all the links that we saw in the video clips that we saw. Shironet. It has the lyrics to every Hebrew song under the skies. Some of these clips on YouTube also have the words in the description, so you'll be able to follow along as well. Okay, so with that, Wednesday, we're going to be talking about these 3 songs and other songs that you most identify with Israel and with Hebrew. So bring your recommendations. That's what you're going to be talking about on Wednesday. Next week, how to make roots say even more by even adding another letter. So now that we have 4-letter roots, and how to create words that sound like the 21st century in a 5,000-year-old language. Until then, this recording will be up on YouTube in the next day or two, along with all the resources that you saw, the lyrics, the clips, everything. And until Wednesday, and hopefully next Wednesday when I see you all for our conversation groups, and next Monday, Toda Rabba, thank you all for joining, and Lihitrot. See you all very soon.